Good morning, and thank you for standing by. As a reminder, all lines will be in listen-only throughout the entire call today, and this call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Thank you. You may now begin.
Thank you very much. Good day, everyone, and welcome to this abbreviated session of the Chronic Fatigue Syndrome Advisory Committee webinar. We are going to start and take care of housekeeping items and move things along as rapidly and judiciously as we can. We'll start with the roll call of the members, beginning with the voting members, and just answer present or here, whatever you like. Dane Cook.
Present.
Lisa Corbin. Marianne Fletcher.
Present.
Gary Kaplan.
Present.
Steve Krafchick.
Present.
Adrian Casillas. Rebecca Collier.
Present.
Jordan Dimitrikov.
Present.
Eileen Holder.
Holderman, here.
I'm sorry, Holderman. Sorry, Eileen. Susan Levine.
Here.
And then our ex officio members, Susan Mayer.
Present.
Cheryl Williams. Beth Collins Sharp.
Here.
Ermias Balai.
Yes, Galen.
Janet Maynard.
I'm present.
Keith Hall.
Present.
Deborah Willis-Fellinger.
Present.
Elaine Perry.
Here.
Amanda Wolf. Janine Clayton. And then our three community liaison organizations, the CFSAC Association of America, represented by Carol Head.
Present.
The New Jersey Chronic Fatigue Syndrome Association, represented by Billy Moore.
Present.
And International Association for Chronic Fatigue Syndrome, Myalgic Encephalomyelitis, represented by Ken Friedman. Is Ken there? So we need to work in promoting Ken because I think he's on the list. And then our designated federal official, Nancy Lee.
Oh, I'm here, and I know what happened with Ken, and I just sent him. He had the wrong passcode.
Okay. Well, we'll get him in. We'll get him in tied in here in just a moment.
I had a similar problem, Galen, but I solved it.
Great.
This is Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
I sent him the right passcode, so hopefully. No, the passcode for the phone, not the webinar part.
Okay, let me begin briefly so we can stay on task. Let me start by, first of all, addressing the patients and advocates that are on the call, as well as the committee members. We have great regret that the format has been compressed to a half-day meeting. As everyone knows, that was because of the inclement weather that was in Washington, D.C. yesterday that closed down the federal offices. The condensed agenda has been posted. I suspect that there are not a lot of people that are happy about that agenda. I can tell you I'm one of them. I'm not. I want the community, the MECFS community, to understand this does not represent a lack of interest on the part of CFSAC members. Essentially it is what it is. But we are already working to try to modify the situation. Dr. Lee has informed me that her office is attempting to work out the logistics to have a 1 to 2 day webinar between now and the June face-to-face meeting next summer. And that will hopefully be in February. There'll be more information that will follow as her office works through the logistics. I suppose most people will notice quickly that the basic questions from the public are not on the agenda. I apologize for that, but the format that we've used previously was that on day 2 we collected questions related to the activities of day 1, which was the intent of this one, and because of the time, we ended up eliminating from this abbreviated meeting. The intent will be to restore this for the June meeting. It should be back intact. I think it's a good way for the public to be able to communicate their specific input on things that the committee is discussing. Just to continue to say that we certainly pledge to continue our efforts to develop and advance the recommendations that will be necessary to be forwarded to the Secretary, which would ultimately benefit patients with ME/CFS and their loved ones. Addressing the committee, just remember we're on a very tight agenda today. I appeal to each of you to try to be succinct as you can be when possible, while at the same time I am not suggesting to in any way that I or others should inhibit you from expressing ideas that need to be expressed. We'll get as much today done as we possibly can within the time constraints that we have. We must, however, have time for work group discussions which lead to recommendations, because this has to be done in the public forum, and that will be the major priority of the meeting. With that opening comments, I'm going to turn the control over to Nancy, who's going to introduce comments from Dr. Coe. Nancy.
Sure, thank you. And I, again, welcome everyone, and am very sorry for the fact that the snow gods came yesterday and snowed us all in. I also, just one other thing I want to remind people is when you're speaking, make sure you identify yourself by name so that the note taker and the people listening in know who's talking. So Dr. Coe was very delighted to provide a brief video and audio message to the committee. He could not be here in person. So go ahead and let's start that.
Welcome to the 2013 Fall Webinar meeting of CFSAC. This webcasting technology is a new format, and we welcome input on how it works for you. I will look forward to seeing all of you at the in-person 2014 Spring CFSAC meeting. First, I would like to welcome a new member to the committee, Dr. Gary Kaplan, as well as a new ex officio member, Dr. Janet Maynard from the FDA. Dr. Marshall will tell you a bit more about them. Welcome to you both. Let me also recognize the valuable work of 4 outgoing members with terms due to expire next spring: Dr. Galen Marshall, Dr. Sue Levine, Dr. Dane Cook, and Ms. Eileen Holderman. We value your participation on this committee. Your commitment and contributions are critical in moving the issues of ME/CFS forward. This committee has provided important advice and recommendations to the Secretary. 2 new work groups established at the last CFSAC meeting have responded positively to the new recommendations process. Development of background, evidence, and rationale for each recommendation provides the support that is vital as these recommendations are discussed throughout the department. This has been an effective approach used by other HHS advisory committees. The work groups will report on their progress and discuss any recommendations later this afternoon. We hope you will see the fruits of these efforts as we improve support for CFSAC recommendations. The department remains committed to working with the committee to improve the quality of life of individuals with ME/CFS. I want to express my appreciation for the consistent hard work of the ex officio members in building the department's support to advance CFSAC recommendations. In particular, I commend their efforts in acting upon the committee's recommendation from last year to facilitate the development of a clinical case definition. The ex officios were invaluable in coordinating the financial participation of the agencies to fund the Institute of Medicine study on clinical diagnostic criteria for ME/CFS. The IOM study represents an important step to improve the clinical diagnosis for those with ME/CFS. Too many providers are not aware of how to diagnose ME/CFS, patients have often testified before CFSAC that they consulted with more than 5 clinical providers before getting a proper diagnosis. Widely accepted clinical diagnostic criteria will aid in advancing clinical care, drug development, and research. I am most grateful for the cross-departmental commitment to this effort. Dr. Lee plans to discuss the IOM study later today, and while I'm at it, let me thank the leadership of Dr. Lee and her team. She has done a tremendous job in serving this committee. As progress continues, our communication with stakeholders will remain a high priority. The Secretary as well will be kept informed of the activities of this committee. I know you will have a productive 2-day meeting. Thank you for your dedication.
And we thank Dr. Coe for making that those introductory comments. I do want to follow up on one of the things he said and tell you a little bit more about our 2 new members that we have on the committee. I'm delighted to tell you about Dr. Gary Kaplan, who is the founder, president, and medical director of the Kaplan Center for Integrative Medicine in McLean, Virginia. Dr. Kaplan is board certified in family medicine, pain medicine, and medical acupuncture. He has more than 29 years experience practicing family medicine. He also practices neuromusculoskeletal medicine and osteopathic manipulative medicine. He is a pain management specialist. The Kaplan Center for Integrative Medicine offers comprehensive solutions to individuals suffering with chronic pain and illness. The team of healthcare providers at the Kaplan Clinic combine alternative medicine with alternative practices to help individuals attain optimal health for life. It is recommended that Dr. Kaplan be appointed to fill the position that Dr. Vincent vacated, and the committee was, the leadership was very obliged to do so. Dr. Kaplan, welcome.
Thank you. Very kind remarks.
The other new member we have is an ex officio member from the Food and Drug Administration. Dr. Janet Maynard is a board-certified internist and rheumatologist who is an acting clinical team leader in the Division of Pulmonary, Allergy, and Rheumatology Products at the Food and Drug Administration. She joined the FDA as a medical officer in 2011. She received her medical degree from Vanderbilt University and completed a residency in internal medicine at Duke University. Subsequently, she completed a fellowship in rheumatology at Johns Hopkins. During her fellowship, she completed a Master of Science at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health in the Graduate Training Program in Clinical Investigation. Following her fellowship, she was a faculty member at Johns Hopkins Hospital. During her time at the FDA, she has been involved in various activities related to MECFS, including the Ampligen Advisory Committee meeting. She is enthusiastic to participate in additional activities related to this illness. Dr. Maynard, welcome.
Thank you very much.
With that in mind, folks, we're moving ahead. Actually, this is a good news. We're moving ahead of schedule a little bit. So we're going to move on and turn it back over to Dr. Lee for the Institute of Medicine report. Nancy?
Thank you, Galen. As you know, we have asked the Institute of Medicine to develop criteria for the diagnosis of ME/CFS. Today, I would like to give you a general overview of the process, provide you with some updates, and answer some of the questions that I have received since the FAQs were developed. I would like to begin by describing the purpose of the IOM Committee and the role that CFSAC serves. CFSAC provides recommendations and advice to HHS on a broad range of ME/CFS issues. The IOM Committee, on the other hand, has been given a very specific charge of developing consensus recommendations for clinical diagnostic criteria that can be used by the entire U.S. medical community. While CFSAC's charge is more comprehensive, its purpose, to advise the federal government's Department of HHS, is quite discreet. The opposite, the opposite is true of the IOM study. Of note, CFSAC is a FACA committee and must function under applicable federal rules. The IOM committee is not a FACA committee because the IOM is not part of the federal government. Through this effort, HHS hopes to promote a more widespread awareness and understanding of ME/CFS. Delayed and misdiagnoses are common concerns among the ME/CFS patients, as Dr. Coe alluded, making a more efficient diagnostic process one of the most immediate and impactful steps that can be made in this field. I personally am very excited about the opportunity the recommendations on clinical diagnostic criteria provide for individuals and families affected by ME/CFS. Because of the stature and credibility of the IOM, it will be a big step towards getting healthcare providers to recognize and take seriously this terrible condition. For example, just last month, on November 6th, the lead article in the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, one of the top 2 medical journals in the country, the lead article was a summary of a new IOM report on improving quality of cancer care in the elderly, authored by some of the committee members. We can hope that an article about the ME/CFS diagnostic criteria will be the lead in JAMA in a couple of years. HHS will work with CFSAC, its agencies, ME/CFS stakeholders, and the IOM to disseminate the clinical diagnostic criteria. Next slide, please. Now I will provide a brief overview of how the IOM performs their consensus studies. This information was obtained directly from the IOM website. Some of it is in the FAQs on the CFSAC website. For more than 140 years, the National Academies, which is the IOM's umbrella organization, have been advising the nation on issues of science, technology, and medicine since a congressional charter signed by President Lincoln authorized this non-governmental institution. The National Academies enlists the nation's foremost scientists, health professionals, and other experts to address pressing scientific problems. Each year, more than 6,000 experts are selected to serve on hundreds of study committees that are convened to answer specific questions, and all serve without pay. Federal agencies are the primary financial sponsors of the Academy's work, but state agencies, foundations, and other private sponsors also fund studies. A key point is that the Academies provide independent advice. External sponsors, including the federal government, have no control over the conduct of a study once the statement of task and budget are finalized. Study committees gather information from many sources in public meetings, but they carry out their deliberations in private in order to avoid political special interest and sponsor influence. I want to outline the 4 stages of the IOM process. First is defining the study, and the statement of task defines the scope of the study and serves as the basis for determining the expertise and the balance of perspectives needed on the committee. The statement of task is posted on the CFSAC website in the FAQs, and these were sent out in November. So you can review the statement of task. The next step is committee selection. All committee members serve as individual experts, not as representatives of organizations or interest groups. Each member is expected to contribute to the project on the basis of his or her own expertise and judgment. The IOM looks for a range of expertise to address the study's statement of task and strives for differences in experiences and perspectives among the committee members. A committee is not finally approved until a thorough discussion on the balance of the committee and any conflicts of interest is held at the first meeting, and issues raised in that discussion or by the public are investigated. There are several steps in the committee selection and approval process. First, the IOM solicits suggestions for potential committee members from a wide range of sources and then recommends a slate of nominees. The nominees are then reviewed and approved within the National Academies. A provisional list is next posted for public comment on the IOM website. The provisional committee members complete background information and conflict of interest disclosure forms. These are discussed in detail at their first meeting. Conflicts of interest or issues of committee balance and expertise are considered by the IOM, and the changes to the committee are finalized. And then, notably, committee members continue to be screened for conflict of interest throughout the life of the committee. Stage 3, the study committees begin to gather information through open meetings that are announced in advance on the IOM website. They also use information submitted by stakeholders and reviews of the scientific literature. Efforts are made to solicit input from individuals who have been directly involved in or who have special knowledge of the problem under consideration. The committee deliberates in meetings closed to the public in order to develop draft recommendations free from outside influences. Committee members are asked to consider the viewpoints of the other members, to reflect their own views rather than be a representative of an organization, and to base their conclusions on the scientific evidence. The committee comes to consensus on its recommendation, meaning all agree on the recommendations. However, a member may issue a dissenting opinion to the report if he or she disagrees with the consensus of the other members. Finally, the next stage is a review of these IOM recommendations and report through a rigorous independent external review by experts who have similar expertise to those on the committee. This review process is structured to ensure that each report addresses its study charge and does not go beyond it, that the findings are supported by the scientific evidence, and that the report is impartial and objective. Then the committee responds to, but needs not agree with, the reviewer comments. After all committee members and National Academies officials have signed off on the final report, it is transmitted to the sponsor of the study and is released to the public. Sponsors are not given an opportunity to suggest changes to the report. Next slide. As you're probably aware, the IOM announced its provisional slate of committee members on December 3rd. You will see on this slide that it includes at least 7 individuals with substantial experience with ME/CFS, including some who are former CFSAC members. I hope this helps to answer questions about how the IOM process works. I'd be happy to take questions from CFSAC members at this time. And just to, in the interest of time, to say that I don't particularly feel it's necessary for me to answer the questions that are already on the website in the FAQs. We sent those around to you. If you have questions about the information within the answers in the FAQs, I'm happy to provide the, talk about that, but let's not rehash the information that's already on the website. So go ahead.
Thank you, Nancy. For the sake of order, and I think I had mentioned this in an email to the committee, a procedural email to the committee. Above the screen there is a little set your hand status. If you'll just click that, indicating that you wish to speak, I'm writing a note down and we'll one by one identify people. And I've got one already. We'll start with Eileen Holderman. Eileen.
Thank you, Galen. Thank you, Dr. Lee. I just wanted to say that, this has been the most written about and talked about issue in our disease's history. With that said, why did HHS continue to move forward knowing that 50 experts in ME/CFS sent a letter to Secretary Sebelius and 171 advocates signed a letter opposing the contract and countless patients, caregivers, and civilians opposed it? What was the thought process in moving ahead anyway, especially since it does not reflect the CFSAC recommendation?
That answer was on the FAQs. Can you go into further detail based on what we said in the FAQs?
So I read the FAQs, and it was a long document, and I've read so much, but can you just give me a concise answer? That would
Well, it's because we feel, and I sort of touched on it at the beginning of my remarks today, that we feel that the IOM is the best way to get credible, scientifically reviewed, and scientifically credible evidence to all of the U.S. healthcare providers that need to know about this condition.
And my follow-up is...
Well, just a second. Let's go to the next question, and then we can... we have time.
We're going to try to do one at a time, Eileen, just so that for everybody else to know, so we can get everybody there. The list is picking up quickly. Dane Cook is next.
Yes, hi, this is Dane Cook. Good morning, everyone. My question is concerning the mechanism for public comment. Would this be an effective mechanism for other experts to weigh in as well? And how would that work? Will that work through the listserv, or will there be some mechanism sent out to the public asking for comment on it?
That's a good question, Dane. And and I think that's even slightly covered in the FAQs as well. There is a IOM website, and we sent it out on our listserv last month, that is collecting information and public comments, not only on matters of the clinical diagnostic criteria, but also suggestions and comments about the proposed committee members. So they're looking for things there. If you go to our FAQs that are on the CFSAC website, the link, I believe that the link to the IOM website is on there.
Yeah, so I did that, and so you get to sign up for a listserv, but I didn't see the exact mechanism of how you put in your own, how you would put in your input to the committee. So if that could be clarified, that would be useful.
And we'll do that. I believe it is, Kyra, do you want to just come and answer that question?
Sure. Dane, the web page that includes the provisional committee list is where you can actually submit specific comments.
There's a place at the bottom.
Yes, at the bottom of the list of provisional committee members, there is a link to submit comments. And we can send that out again via the listserv, but that is where they're accepting specific comments.
Okay, thank you very much.
So let me just jump in real quick. There are a couple of people in the listener list that are raising their hands. Unfortunately, we're not able to acknowledge those individuals for questions and comments, just to let that be known. And the second is, please take your hand down once you've had a chance to ask your question. If you want to ask another one, then you can put it back up, and that helps me know that that I'm not forgetting someone. Next on the list.
This is Steve Krafchick. I'm
Yes.
not sure what I pressed to say I have to say something.
You're up. You're actually next on the list, Steve.
Oh,
Krafchick.
good. So whatever I hit was
Whatever
right.
you did was correct.
Thank you. I was looking at the provisional committee members and don't recognize many of them as experts in chronic fatigue syndrome. Can you, Nancy, go through and tell us a little bit about them and whether they have significant experience with chronic fatigue syndrome? I recognize Lucinda Bateman and Lily Chu and Peter Rowe and Ben Nadelson, but the rest of them are kind of a mystery to me.
So I think in general there are 7 of the 15. So Lucinda Bateman.
I guess Nancy Klimas. I forgot Nancy.
Lucinda Bateman, Lily Chu, Betty, I need the list back up, please. Yes, thank you. Betsy Keller is an exercise physiologist. Nancy Klimas. Martin Lerner is an infectious disease person who's worked in MECFS for years. Benjamin Nadelson and Peter Rowe. Benjamin Nadelson, Nancy Klimas, and Lucinda Bateman are all PIs on the multi-center study that CDC is conducting. Yes.
And the other people are bringing what kind of expertise?
Well, I will refer you to the website, to the because they have a full. If you will look at the IOM website, we sent out on the listserv. And
I'm on the IOM website and I can't find it.
Well, anyway, we don't have time for that right now, but I sent out several days ago to both the committee members and the listserv a link to the new members, and you can look at it there.
Thank you.
Next is Marianne Fletcher.
Hi. I guess my question is similar to Steve's. I can see why the people who I recognize as being expert in ME/CFS were selected. I have no idea why the ones who are not in the field were selected, and I think that, and who decided on them? What criteria were used to be on this committee that's of such importance to the field? That to me is a real problem, and I'm not sure was it the Institute of Medicine itself? Was it HHS who suggested names? I'm really not happy with this.
So, Marianne, so have you reviewed the list of names on the IOM website with their qualifications? Have you reviewed those yet?
I haven't, and they're not in the field.
Okay, so all right.
The majority of people on this committee, including the chair, are not experts in ME/CFS.
So, so just to make it clear, HHS had nothing to do with the selection. We submitted some names. CDC submitted some names. I think there were many names that were submitted by ME/CFS advocates and patients. And then I saw the list of the provisional panel member when it was posted on the IOM website. So, so again, HHS gave some names. We actually forwarded the letter from the ME/CFS experts that we received about September 23rd. We gave that letter to the IOM staff and said, there's a lot of good experts on here. You may want to use some of these names. And they were quite appreciative of that. And the IOM looks for experience both in the condition of interest, but also in guideline development, in disseminating clinical work to the field, et cetera. So there are a number of people on there with other qualifications that have relevance to this statement of task. Next question, please.
I don't see anyone else. Eileen, you had a follow-up question. You're welcome to ask that question now if you like.
Okay. Thank you, Galen. With all the important information out there on the IOM report for Gulf War illness, whereas they renamed the illness chronic multi-symptom illness and suggested CBT, GET, and antidepressants for clinical practices. In that same report, there was a section on ME/CFS, and that is what concerns the community. And I say the community meaning the scientific, medical, and patient community, along with countless other concerns about the study that we do not want to go forward. Why did HHS not take that into consideration? And the more important question is HHS considering canceling this contract, which is what the majority of the communities want?
This is a done deal as far as the contract, Eileen. HHS has signed a contract with IOM and transferred funds from last year's budget. We can't get that money back even if we wanted. And as you heard from Dr. Coe, there is good support at HHS for the budget. The IOM is very interested and open to input from the ME/CFS patients, experts, and other stakeholders. At this point, stakeholders have more of an opportunity to provide input to the IOM community than does HHS. I urge you all to take advantage of this. This could include weighing in on whether there should be a new name for ME/CFS, and if so, what that name should be. Another concern that I have heard is whether the IOM will consider a broad or narrow spectrum of ME/CFS, whether it will consider ME separate from chronic fatigue syndrome, from other related conditions. Please provide input during the IOM process on what you recommend. Also, just to note that Gulf War study that you mentioned, Eileen, was specifically designed around treatment for Gulf War syndrome. This statement of task that we have given and contracted with the IOM has nothing to do with treatment. We did not ask them to do treatment at all. And we didn't ask them to do a research agenda either. They may come up with some research suggestions around how to better clarify clinical diagnostic criteria. But we did not ask, in general, for a research definition. So as I said earlier, and as we said in the FAQs, we think this is a singular opportunity for to have a major impact in the field of ME/CFS and in the clinical care for ME/CFS. And that has been our judgment, and we are going forward because this is an irrevocable contract.
Next is Susan Levine.
Hi, Galen. I wondered, how was Dr. Clayton chosen as the chair of this committee, and will there be a rotation, or you may not have that in place yet, what the actual protocol will be, but will,
Okay, as I said before, Susan, we had absolutely no role in choosing these committee members. I don't know why she was chosen. She is, my understanding is that IOM committee study chairs are usually members of the IOM. That's the only qualification I know.
And so you don't know if there will be a replacement at some point, or there will be a rotation?
No, I think not. I think she's there. Yeah, Kyra, who used to work at the IOM, says no. This is for the duration of the 18-month study. So there are different parts of the IOM. So there are these fora, and there are different ongoing chairs. Ongoing panels that may have rotations and stuff. This is a study that they've directly taken on, and she will be the chair for the whole time, barring some kind of unforeseen circumstance.
Next is Billy Moore.
Thank you, Galen. Nancy, if you would, could you give us the rationale, this is a very large question still within the community, as to what was the rationale within the HHS, all departments involved in the IOM study, for going to the IOM, doing it in secret, without any input from the community initially, before the contract was already written and ready to be signed, rather than taking the CCC definition, which was supported by all the experts in the field, or many of the experts? That has never been really answered.
Okay, so there were two things. The CCC definition is 10 years old. So if we want to have the major professional societies to push that out and make that a priority in their membership to learn more about it, they would not accept a 10-year-old definition. So it needed to be updated. And using the consensus definition we wanted the IOM to consider that. This was using fiscal year, end-of-year money that several of the different agencies pulled in. We were barely making it as far as getting all the contracting done. It's a complicated process. This was advice from an advisory committee. We took that advice. We applied our own judgment as how we know to disseminate information widely in the medical community, and we believed that the IOM was the best way to go. But we are hoping that we'll come up with the same the same with the outcome that you all are envisioning, which is that clinical care providers know a whole lot more about CFS and can make better diagnoses. But we did have input from most of the ex officios, and Galen Marshall helped as well with input in the statement of task. Next question.
Next is back to Mary Ann Fletcher.
Hello. Yes, I'm wondering, what was this advisory committee, and what was wrong with the standings committee that was already existing, the CFSAC? And I mean, it just came as a real shock that the committee that was authorized under statute was left out, except, as you say, perhaps by the chairperson of this committee. All the rest of the members were not in the loop. We have made resolution after resolution asking for the adoption of a standardized clinical and research definition, but we never ever envisioned, at least I didn't, and I don't think most of the members of the committee envisioned, that a committee composed of a majority of people out of the field would be given the task of revising what I think is actually a very good definition, and that's the CCC. And also, I'm not at all sure that we have to change a case definition because the existing one is 10 years old. That makes, to me, not a whole lot of sense. But we were also ready as a group over and over to have this case definition examined and, if necessary, renewed. But then it went out of our hands, and it went into a situation where the majority of people are not in the field.
I will. I understand your concerns, Mary Ann. Just FYI, non-federal. Only federal people can be involved in the contracting part, so that's part of the issue. And I will once again say that the CCC has been around for 10 years, and it hasn't had a whole lot of traction outside of the community that regularly see chronic fatigue syndrome. I think it was time to have a way to broaden broaden the outreach to providers around the country. And there is no better way to do that than the IOM. There is no better way. So the IOM is going to have that case definition. They will be able to look at more recent science, and there are more recent science going on. They've already expressed interest in getting the results from the CDC study, which will be informative for them. So they will be able to consider that as well. And then maybe, like I said, maybe in 2 years we're going to have a lead article in JAMA putting this out there.
Let me take a brief moment first and ask everyone to put their hands back down that have asked questions, so I can see if there is anyone that wants to go around in the few minutes we have left. And Paul, I'm reaching out to you. Dr. Adrian Casillas is on the call and needs to be advanced to a presenter, please. So I still see other hands left up. I'm assuming that they're looking for another round. So let me go down in the few minutes we have. We have about 4 minutes left. So please make these short and to the point. Dane, you first. Dane Cook? Okay. Eileen?
Okay, I just want to address what Dr. Lee said about CFSAC having input. Admittedly, you say only Dr. Marshall and ex officios had input, so that's ignoring about 10 other voting CFSAC members who had no input, no knowledge until the contract was signed. So that's misrepresentation, and I object to that. And Secretary Sebelius wrote a letter to the signatories with the understanding that we're involved. We are not, and I would like to state for the record that we were not involved. Our recommendation was not implemented. All the aspects of what we called for in our recommendation were ignored in your going to the IOM, and that the prevailing thought in the scientific, medical, and patient community is that the contract can still be canceled, because it can be. All contracts can. And it would be the best solution to do that, to and just move on and adopt the CCC like the ME-CFS experts recommended. And one final thought is that the conflict of interest exists in that the statement of work says NIH will work with IOM, to avoid overlap. And yet IOM says the sponsor will not play a role. So I don't know how that's going to bring about an unbiased result. So just for the record, the majority of stakeholders reject this study.
Let me jump in. Eileen, do you need a response to that, or is that for the record?
That's mostly for the record, except
okay.
I would like to, Dr. Lee, if she could, to respond to the 2 points about not asking CFSAC's input other than Dr. Marshall, and the conflict of interest issue.
Okay. Nancy, we have 2 minutes to respond to that.
And then I have some closing remarks I'd like to say, Galen.
Okay.
Just 30 seconds.
Okay.
I just want to remind everyone that the Chronic Fatigue Syndrome Advisory Committee is an advisory committee. It is not an oversight committee. It is an advisory committee. We took the advice and we put it through our public health experience. I think later on today, Susan will be talking more about the NIH study. I can't really discuss that except to say that the NIH is closely involved in this contract as far as managing the contract. I'd like to close my remarks just to say that CFSAC members and the ME-CFS advocacy community have a true opportunity to contribute important information, perspective, and recommendations to the IOM committee. I know that this is already happening, and I'm very happy about it. I have seen much vitriol and personal attacks in email and in blogs around the IOM study. I don't see how this will be constructive going forward, given the opportunity before ME-CFS patients and families. Everyone I know who is working to make the clinical diagnostic criteria a reality has good intentions and wants to make things better for ME-CFS patients. Respectfully offered criticisms and divergent opinions are important and welcome, but implying that the IOM staff or a committee member don't have good intentions and will not be helpful and it could backfire. I have had patient advocates apologize to me in private for the vitriolic behavior of another advocate. Going forward, when this happens in a public forum or a blog or an email, you might want to call them out and reel them in. Thanks.
Galen, I have one final comment.
No, we need to move on. I'm sorry, we're already a minute over. Moving on to the next is...
That was
Gail,
an
and
indictment
I
on
also
the
had a
advocacy
comment.
community. That was an indictment and a criticism of the advocacy community. I need to respond to that on behalf of the advocates. I can't let that stand.
Okay, I'll give you 1 minute for that.
Okay. I do agree with Dr. Lee in that this is a highly contested issue, but for the most part, I have seen constructive criticism. It is intense, but you have to understand that for decades, patients have been harmed a lot by health agencies. That doesn't give anyone the right to do a personal attack, but I think you're cherry picking and instead not looking at the productive initiatives that have happened, such as the advocate's letter, the petition, the congressional meetings, the demonstration, the proper letters, the Twitter campaigns, the media articles, the interviews on TV, the great blogs. These are very productive and impressive, and they need to be made known instead of leaving on a unfairly negative note. So I'm standing up for the community and saying props to the community for all they're doing.
Okay, thank you, Eileen. Steve, 1 minute, please.
Very quickly. The 10-year-old definition has been adopted by the recent primer put out by the IACFS, so it's definitely alive and well and more current than the Fukuda definition, which is used in the CDC website, which is more than 10 years old. I think it's 1994, so that would make it almost, I don't know how to do the math. So I hope that the IOM would look at the primer and use the primer and have people familiarize themselves, because that is a good basis for clinical care in this field. What's needed is a coherent definition, and the motion that I made that was passed and advised the Secretary related to having a consensus workshop with experts in the community. And I appreciate the need to use, I think it's $1 million for the IOM study. And I have been a member of an IOM study, so I have great respect for the organization. But I share Eileen's concerns about what was put in the Gulf War syndrome debacle that they got involved in, and hope we don't have another one with them. And the lack of strong CFS members is a problem. And where else do we get a clinical definition than from the people who treat these patients? Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Let's move on to the to the agency updates. For the sake of time, in this abbreviated format, we only have 2 agencies that are actually presenting. The others will be entered into the public record. The first is the NIH and Susan Mayer.
Thank you, Chairperson Marshall. My name is Susan Meyer, and today I will be speaking on behalf of the National Institutes of Health regarding research and activities related to myalgic encephalomyelitis chronic fatigue syndrome. The National Institutes of Health, a part of the Department of Health and Human Services, is the nation's medical research agency. The mission of NIH is to seek fundamental knowledge about the nature and behavior of living systems and the application of that knowledge to enhance health, lengthen life, and reduce illness and disability. Today I'm going to provide you with 3 topic-specific updates. The first one will be the FY13, fiscal year 13 funding for MECFS, progress on the evidence-based methodology workshop for MECFS, and an update from the Trans-NIH MECFS Research Working Group. Since my time is limited today, I will do a very highly focused presentation, but I do have some other items to discuss during later question and answer session. So in fiscal year 13, which ended on September 30th, this past, NIH spent approximately $5 million on 16 grants or projects categorized as MECFS. In FY13, there were 14 new projects funded, 11 non-competing renewals, and 1 bridge award. Now let me give you a caveat about these numbers. Usually we tell you how to search for the MECFS funding using the NIH Report web tool. And we ask you to look under the Research Condition and Disease Categorization tool under Chronic Fatigue Syndrome, ME. These reports for the Research Condition and Disease Categorization are not released until April of every year. So the information I'm providing you is in NIH Report, but you will not find it under the RCDC, or Research Condition and Disease Categorization tool. So just so that you don't all call me and email me and say, I can't find the number you told me about. I'm telling you, this is from our internal server information. It is publicly available information, and the funds that we have spent do add up to at least $5 million for FY13. Let me give you some examples of ME-CFS-focused research that came up in FY13. We have topics such as gene expression profiling in CFS, pediatric CFS, oxidative stress models of CFS, exertional exhaustion in CFS, biomarkers, neuroimmune processes, and the role of inflammation. In order to increase the amount of funding spent on ME-CFS research, there needs to be an increase in the number of applications submitted to NIH with well-crafted hypotheses, thoughtful and diligent experimental design, and careful attention to the science behind the application and the translational impact of the experimental outcome to the clinical realm. I'll talk more about how we plan to address this issue later in my remarks. Applications for ME-CFS research funding may continue to submit under the current program announcements. The next receipt date is February 24th, 2014. Those announcement numbers are PAR-12-032 and PAR-12-033. Applications for ME-CFS research can also be submitted under NIH parent funding opportunities. Links to all of these types of funding opportunities for ME-CFS specific and other opportunities can be found at the Trans-NIH ME-CFS Research Working Group website. The second update concerns the Evidence-Based Methodology Workshop for ME-CFS, which is now called the Pathways to Prevention Program. The NIH Office of Disease Prevention has revamped the Evidence-Based Methodology Workshop to become now the Pathways to Prevention Program. The Pathways to Prevention Program was renamed to better reflect the overarching goal of the program. The goal of the Pathways to Prevention Program is to host workshops that identify research gaps in a selected scientific area, identify methodological and scientific weaknesses in that scientific area, suggest research needs, and move the field forward through an unbiased, evidence-based assessment of a complex public health issue. This program was developed out of a need for a process that could be implemented rapidly and concur or conclude within approximately a year's time and address topics that have significant methodological weaknesses. The proposal was submitted to the Pathways to Prevention Program by the Trans-NIH ME-CFS Research Working Group, and it was selected to move forward to the program on December 11th, 2012. The purpose of the program, the Pathways to Prevention Program for ME-CFS, is to evaluate the research evidence surrounding the outcomes from the use of multiple case definitions for ME-CFS and address the validity, reliability, ability of the current case definitions to identify those individuals with the illness or without the illness, or to identify subgroups of individuals with the illness who might be reliably differentiated with the different specific case definitions. The purpose of this workshop, the Pathways to Prevention Program and the workshop for ME-CFS, is not, and I repeat, not to create a new case definition for research for ME-CFS. The timeline for our program began, as I said, last year. In February of 2013, an organizational meeting was conducted with federal representatives. The purpose of the meeting was to determine the feasibility and merit of the topic area. The deliverable from this meeting was a decision move forward or not with the proposal, and to suggest names of experts in all facets of ME/CFS for membership on a subsequent working group. The decision was made to move forward. The first working group meeting was scheduled in October of 2013, and as you know, this meeting was canceled due to the furlough. The meeting has been rescheduled for January 6th through 7th in 2014. The working group will meet to develop the questions for the evidence review, develop workshop themes, suggest speakers, and develop an agenda for the meeting. Additional meetings of the working group will need to occur in order to develop the agenda further, invite speakers, and go through the process of other aspects of the workshop. So the purpose of this working group meeting that occurs in January is to develop questions that will form the basis of the evidence review, develop workshop themes and structures, suggest names of presenters for the workshop. The deliverable from this meeting will be a list of questions for the evidence review and themes for the workshop, perhaps a draft agenda, and many speaker names for those who will speak at the meeting. The third update I have concerns the Trans-NIH ME/CFS Research Working Group. We have added several new members since the last time the roster was presented. We have engaged representation from the Office of Dietary Supplements, the Intramural Program of the National Institute on Nursing Research, and representation from the Eunice Kennedy Shriver National Institute of Child Health and Human Development. As of this date, we have secured representation from 19 separate institutes, centers, and offices at NIH, all of which have an interest in research on ME/CFS. And the updated roster will be available on the website shortly. The working group recently created a technical assistance network composed of NIH staff to assist individuals interested in submitting a proposal for NIH funding on ME/CFS. This subgroup of the working group is available to provide technical assistance for submitting a proposal to NIH and provide institute and center specific guidance for proposals that align with the missions of various institutes and centers at NIH, all of which have an interest in ME/CFS research. The goal of this network is to increase the quantity and quality of research proposals submitted to NIH focused on ME/CFS research by providing guidance directly to investigators by NIH staff interested in promoting ME/CFS and with knowledge of the field through their representation on the working group. A list of the NIH staff serving on this subgroup will be posted to the Trans-NIH ME/CFS Research Working Group website very shortly. Finally, I would like to introduce you to a new staff member in the Office of Research on Women's Health, Dr. Mariella Shirley. Dr. Shirley will be replacing me as the chair of the Trans-NIH ME/CFS Research Working Group. I'm confident that Dr. Shirley will provide the working group with the leadership and service that will facilitate the advancement of research and activities on ME/CFS across NIH. Dr. Shirley's contact information is currently located on the working group website. Those are all the comments I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer, and you have to apologize. I have to apologize for my combined Texas-Mississippi accent for mispronouncing your name initially. Moving on to our next presenter, Dr. Ermias Balai for the Centers for Disease Control. Ermias?
Thank you, Galen. Confirm if you can hear me well.
Hear you just fine.
Okay. I'll be following the slides, and would someone please help me advance the slides as I speak. I'm Ermias Balai, and I'll be providing the agency updates for CDC. Next slide, please. My updates are wrong slide. That's the slide. Now, my updates are organized in three categories. Our educational initiatives. Second one basically is a summary of the 7 clinic site studies, and then our outreach efforts to patient communities. Next slide, please. Next slide. First, the educational initiatives. Next slide. A new Medscape roundtable was recently launched by CDC under the title, A Case-Based Approach to Chronic Fatigue Syndrome. You can see the screenshot of that Medscape site in the left lower corner of the slide. The roundtable was moderated by Dr. Komarov, and the other participants included Dr. Corbin, Dr. Nedelson, and Dr. Peter Rowe. In the target for this Medscape roundtable are primary care physicians and also nurse practitioners. The physicians or the clinicians who actually take the course and complete it are required to answer different questions before they qualify for continuing medical education credits. And as of the end of October, and you can see that number at the lower right-hand side corner of the slide. As of the end of October, over 10,000 clinicians have gone to the site and probably taken the courses, but a little over 2,000 of the clinicians actually qualified for continuing medical education credits, which have already been issued. Now, as you're probably aware, Medscape aggressively promotes the education sites that they develop to reach as many clinicians as possible. Next slide, please. But we recently initiated this collaboration with a group here at CDC that works with academic associations. It's called the CDC Academic Partnerships to Improve Health, or APIH. And that group actually has a collaboration with several professional associations, including the Association of American Medical Colleges. So we used the listserv for these different academic associations to promote the CME credits that we've been working on. And the ones that have been distributed are listed on the slide. So one of the CME was on the diagnosis and management of CFS. Second one is the sleep problems in CFS. In the new Medscape education initiative that I just described, case-based approach to chronic fatigue syndrome. So these CME credits or CME courses were distributed using the listserv of the academic partnerships to improve health. Next slide. Now, before I go to the next topic, the other initiative that we had was a production of a standardized patient to be used in different medical school curricula for educating medical students. Now, I don't have a slide for it, but that I have received a lot of inquiries from the public regarding the status of that specific initiative. It's still under production. We have not finalized it yet, and it's going through CDC clearance before it's uploaded to the Med Portal website, where medical schools would have access to it. And specific comments that I've received from the public included whether or not post-exertional malaise would be included as part of that educational process. And we will do the best we can to try to accommodate that request, that post-exertional malaise would be included in that educational process. The second topic...
Dr. Belay, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we are running short on time, and apparently the message didn't get about the condensing of this. If you could condense your remarks into about 4 more minutes, I would be most grateful.
Okay. Initially, I thought I had 10 minutes given to, so I prepared my slides for about 10 minutes. But I'll try to condense them.
Thank you.
The next one is the 7 clinic site study. The objective is listed here, as you can see. And the objective included to collect standardized standardized data on major illness domains or CFS to be able to describe the heterogeneity of the patients among the various practices and also generate evidence-based data to address potential CFS subgroups and potentially also address the case definition question. Next slide. Now, this slide lists 7 clinic sites and the PIs in those sites. And as you can see, the list includes the who's who of CFS clinical expertise in the United States. And the map shows where the clinic sites are in the country. Next slide. Now, the protocol for that study was developed by CDC in collaboration with the PIs. And it was designed to fit the clinic routine with minimal disruption to patient care and also by minimizing the burden on the patients. And the study is being conducted in several stages. And stage 1, as shown in this slide, included data collection from physical examinations of the patients done within the last 1 year. In study within 1 year, and patients completed questionnaires for self-reported measures of illness. Next slide, please. And under this phase, in stage 1, we actually exceeded the targeted 450 patient enrollment, and we have about 470 patients in the study now. In data cleaning and analysis is in progress. And as it was indicated earlier, we'll be sharing the data with the IOM's committee that's considering the case definition issue. Next slide. Under stage 2, all clinics will collect follow-up information on the patients enrolled in stage 1, and saliva and blood for DNA and RNA extraction will be collected, saliva for cortisol testing, and DNA and RNA extraction to be stored in case new hypotheses in terms of the etiology of CFS will be available in the future, and we'll be able to test them among well-characterized group of patients where we have not only laboratory samples but also good clinical data. And the additional studies planned under stage 2 include enrolling healthy controls and for comparison with the ill patients, and also enrolling pediatric cases. Next slide. And next, for the interest of time, I'll summarize. Next slide, please. My last portion of the update, which is outreach to patient support groups. Next slide, please. As you know, we have already introduced what we call patient-centered outreach and communication activity, which follows a format of 15 minutes updates from the CFS program here at CDC and a 20-minute presentation by an invited speaker. We had a PICOCA call in September, and Dr. Ian Lipkin from Columbia University presented on infection and immunity in CFS patients. And we had hoped to have that summary available on our website, but unfortunately we may not be able to do that because of clearance issues within the agency. Thank you. I hope I stayed within my 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Balai. Appreciate it. We'll now move on to the the public comments, but I will assure those, even though we're running about 6 minutes late, we will not shorten this on the back of the public comments. We'll have full public comments, and we'll make up the time later. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Lee.
Thank you. So I'm going to first, the first one should be a audio tape from Jeanette Burmeister. Is that queued up?
Yes.
Go ahead and do that one.
And I'd like to talk about the IOM contract. Just to recap briefly, CFSAC recommended to convene a stakeholders meeting in consultation with CFSAC members, with any CFS experts, patients, and advocates to reach consensus on a case definition. Instead, what did we get? A study, quote-unquote, by the Institute of Medicine that includes no patients or advocates nor CFSAC, and that will include a number of professionals without any prior experience with ME/CFS. Anybody brave enough to bet that true ME/CFS experts will not be in the minority? And when I say true experts, let me clarify that folks who spend millions of dollars on the study of the psychosocial aspects of the disease and on coping mechanisms really don't count, although they will undoubtedly be included in the IOM panel, as will likely other folks open to unscientific psychobabble. The IOM study is quite